Good morning, everybody. It's time to wake up. Yeah, I know it's dark outside yet, but come on, we got stuff to do today. It's Wake Up Wednesday, and we're going to wake up to Paul's letter to the Ephesians. Now, I'm not going to get into it now, but there's some question as to whether this really is Paul's writing or if it was one of his disciples. And you know what? It doesn't matter for our purposes right now, but we do know it was a letter written to probably the churches in the Ephesus area. And it does contain a lot of Paul's thoughts, but the way it was written and some of the theological concepts that we find throughout the letter tend to say, we think this was one of his disciples that wrote this letter and used his name, which was perfectly acceptable and common in that day. We would go, you can't do that nowadays, but no, they did it all the time back in the day. So let's just look beyond authorship possibilities and look instead to what is being said. What is being said is, well, let's get this out of the way first. You would be in big trouble with your English teacher if you wrote a sentence like this. That's right, verses 3 through 14 of the first chapter of Ephesians, one long sentence in the Greek. Now, for us readers of English, we have to chop that up into about 5 or 6 sentences because it just doesn't flow as nicely as it does in the Greek. So, uh, and it's one large blessing. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. You know, it's a blessing for God, but it brings Jesus into the picture because Jesus is all important in this. Now, there's a lot of concepts here that we really need to unpack, but we don't have the time to do that. So I'm just going to mention one that pops out at me. And you go to verse 5, he destined us for adoption as his children through Jesus Christ. Wow. You might say, it's pretty cool, that God would think of adopting us. Adoption was something that was ultra, ultra, ultra important way back then. It is now too, but not as much for us so much as it did for the people back then. Because if you were in a position of power or even of wealth, and the two kind of went hand in hand, and you didn't have children, or maybe your children somehow died during their infancy or even in their younger years because, didn't have all the stuff we have now to keep you going. You wanted to be able to pass on your influence or your wealth in a good way to this world. And the way you did it was by adoption. So you'll see that as a very key item, not only in the letter to the Ephesians, but in some of the other New Testament letters as well. Being adopted. But we also see that whole thought going back into the Older Testament as well, because it's all about being chosen for a purpose, and chosen to inherit the wealth of God. And that's found all through this passage. This is one of those passages you have to read bit by bit by bit and really, really slow and let it all sink in. There's so much going on here. It's just mind blowing. So I encourage you, take the time to sit down and read it. Read it 4, 5, 6, 7 times. I mean, really let it soak in. It's a beautiful beginning to this letter to the Ephesians. And in essence, what it's talking about is how all of us are in this together as God's chosen people for the sake of the world, to receive his love, his grace, and to share it with the world. I mean, the letter is telling the Jews and the Greeks where it's going out to to live in community with one another. And that is so important to get the good news of God's love, grace, forgiveness, redemption. These things are all packed into these first couple verses. So again, read it, enjoy it, and realize we, at this Christmas time, have been gifted with a wondrous load of grace. As we're going to read in here, grace upon grace upon grace. God's blessings be with you this day.